Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hollywood Matt Connolly with the double biceps. It is a legal requirement every single time we appear on camera, just keeping the lawyers happy, ticking the boxes. The man to my left, but to your right, it is the co-pilot, the co-breather of air, the co-wearer of clothes. In this very room, it is, in fact, the master of disaster, the king of sting, the Count of Monte Cristo. It is Thunderlips, the ultimate male. It is the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year Award. And there it is there, the illustrious award held by the illustrious man with the illustrious beard. It is your friend and mine. It is Dave Stockbridge. Stockbridge, welcome to your own Daily Combat podcast.
Well, thank you very much for that very, very warm introduction. I think of it less as mine and more of it ours. After 2.5 years, Hollywood Matt Connolly, if it's not ours, whose is it?
It's everybody's.
Yeah, it is everybody's. And ladies and gentlemen, we are joined here by triple champ Danielle Drop Bear Curtis. Danielle, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
and thank you for having such a professional setup. It makes us, well, I don't know if it makes us look worse but it makes the whole podcast look a whole lot more professional, that's for sure.
Yeah, we're all leveling up together.
And from what I understand, you've got your own podcast, which has just dropped recently. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I most certainly do. And I love that you use the phrasing that it just dropped. Obviously, I'm Danielle Drop Bear Curtis. So obviously the podcast had to be something Drop Bear related. So it's actually called Drop Bear Downpour. And there is a reason for that name. But yeah, basically we're 2 episodes in, and it is a video podcast, obviously available just audio as well. So hence, I guess a little bit of why this probably looks the way it does. We're still just growing and building. I'm just starting. But yeah, super excited about it really, and gotten some really cool feedback. And I felt like it was just the right time to launch it, because we jumped straight in. Actually, the first 2 episodes, my partner and I discussing and debriefing the trip to Adelaide to Diamondback, and pretty much everything leading up to that, the trip itself, and then obviously the fight and after that, and what it meant, and how incredible it was. And we've chopped up some like behind the scenes footage and stuff into the podcast as well, so people can sort of see what it's like from the fighter's perspective and from a partner's perspective, which has been really interesting for me to actually hear my partner talk about what those moments are like for him. So that's been really, really cool for me as well. So and then we're going to talk to a whole bunch of people as well. And I mean, the podcast is really going to be a bit of everything, and hopefully we can do something positive there, give out some advice that helps someone or something along the way. So yeah.
So what was the idea going into it? Was it just to document your journey as an athlete and to have your partner's perspective, or was it more just to kind of share a little bit about your world?
Yeah, well, it was we weren't ever planning that the first episodes would be that. It just felt right. And yeah, originally it was just going to be, a way to sort of bring as I do with everything, I think about the sport and progressing it forward. And I think one of those things sometimes is people don't have, like, they still have an outdated mindset. So sometimes bringing forward, all the good characteristics and showcasing the sport and helping bring a lot more information out there in a different sort of more personable format can help break down those barriers. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do, and showcase things from that positive perspective of what martial arts and combat sports sort of brings to people in a positive light. And I wanted to speak to people about, their journeys and what they do, to be able to give advice and guidance and, help other people. But just in general, I want to chat with some awesome people, because everyone has like a story. And I think there's a lot of other sides of combat sports that people don't get to see. But I also want to showcase, myself and my journey, because people always ask me heaps of questions and they want to know the behind the scenes stuff, but they also want to know a bit more about my life outside of combat sports a little bit as well. And I have I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. I've done a bunch of really random things in my life, like a lot of different things. And so I'm keen to showcase and talk about some of those things. And I love making fun of myself and, all of the dumb things that I've done as well. So I more than happy. Like I plan on telling some really, really funny stories or talking about, you know, the moments where things didn't go right and all of that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of everything. Obviously a lot of combat sports, but a few other bits and pieces to get to know me a little bit outside of that as well.
Well, before we get into too many of those embarrassing stories, perhaps you can fill our audience in with exactly who you are and what you've recently achieved. So I believe you're our very first Australian triple champion. Is that right?
Yes, but I actually don't know of, and I've sort of been researching it since I set myself this goal. I don't think that there is anyone in the sport in general that's been a triple weight division champion holding all titles at the same time. There's been plenty of people that have gotten titles across their entire career in many different weight divisions, but not holding them all at the same time.
We've just got the UFC encyclopedia out.
Yeah,
It's just me.
Just to have a bit of a look. And,
I like it. I like it. Yeah.
No,
So,
I think you're right. Yeah, I can't think of anybody off the top
It
of my head.
doesn't
there's
say any
there's
different in
heaps
the
of people.
UFC encyclopedia. So
Yeah, there's quite a few people nowadays. Double champ is becoming a lot more common. Obviously, that's still less common than say boxing or Muay Thai or whatever, because in MMA the jumps between weight divisions are so significant compared to. So becoming a triple weight division in MMA is basically having 6 titles in boxing, which is huge.
incredible.
So that's why it is such a big thing, and there is such big jumps and such big percentages of your total like body mass essentially that you're either shaving down or putting on. And because people do cut a lot of weight, because these jumps are so big, if you're cutting to well, we're seeing a lot of people cut quite a lot because otherwise they're too small for the next division because they're so big. So yeah, there's been heaps of people that have done double champ. There's a handful of people that have held titles at some point in their career, and it's still very few people in 3 weight divisions, but it's generally been over the entirety of their career. And I've got all 3 of them within like a year and a half.
Wow.
Incredible.
Amazing.
So which was the first of those 3 titles?
The heaviest, so featherweight, and that was my world title where over at GAMA, so the GAMA World Championships, that stands for Global Association of Mixed Martial Arts, basically kind of like Olympics but for MMA. So you go over there, you represent your country. So I was representing Australia, very similar to how boxing is run in the Olympics, that you weigh in every single day. So unlike what we normally have in MMA where it's 24-hour weigh-in, over there it's going to be you weigh in every day, and you potentially are fighting up to 2 or 3 times a day. Usually I think it was a maximum of 2 times a day over a couple of days. And so obviously it's a straight knockout tournament, and it just depends how many athletes came over. So there are 2 of those kind of world championships. There's GAMA and there's IMAF. And IMAF is all AMIs, and GAMA is just the best of best fighters from every country, AMI or pro. So it's a pro-am, but it's fought under the same rule set basically as IMAF. It's basically amateurs because you can't have a tournament with elbows and people getting cut open because then they can't fight the next fight. So you still have the slightly bigger gloves, the material shinies, and the modified rule set.
How many rounds?
Basically an amateur rule set. But I did fight when I fought in so I won all my fights, and won the gold medal, and that was really, really cool because you get to walk out with the flag and you get to hop on the podium and get your medal and sing the national anthem. Everybody has to sing your anthem, so that was cool. But in the gold medal match, I did actually fight a professional fighter, and she was already 4 fights into her professional career. And she had won the Asian or European championships. And so she was the big prospect that was meant to run through the division and win. So, yeah, that was a pretty crazy experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many fights in total was it? And what were the rounds and lengths of the rounds for?
So they were the same. They're still 3 3-minute rounds.
Right.
I had originally, when I was going over there was going to be like 12 people in my division. And then when I got over there, a bunch of them moved divisions. And because it was last year in March, and there was obviously like a lot of countries were locked down the like end of 2021. So there was a bunch of countries that actually couldn't come. So we went from like 12 down to like three or four. So I got 2 matches. I didn't get any buys. And I I flew halfway around the world to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, and my first match was a girl from New Zealand. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh, fantastic.
Especially because like we hung out as like an Oceania like pod. So Australia, New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga, like, you know. And then
Now let's go to war.
yeah. Well, we actually sat down even when we found out the draw, and we had dinner together the night before, and we openly said, oh, this is my experience. This is your experience. Yeah, good luck. Let's make them wish that this was the gold medal match.
Wow, that's incredible.
But the Kazakhstan girl was the only one I think that got a bye because she had already won the Asian Championship. So she was like already ranked within the system, like as number 1. So
That was the professional.
yeah, the professional.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you pretty confident going into that, or were you like many coming out of COVID, not exactly sure where you're sitting on an international basis?
No, I nearly gave up the sport before I got selected for that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a crazy
Nearly
turnaround.
gave up and then became triple champ.
And then 18 months later.
What is this always happening?
So what were some of the things going on there that made you reconsider whether or not this was the sport for you?
Well, it wasn't that I ever didn't love the sport. I had like the worst year of my life in 2021 that like broke me. And so it was coming off the back of that, and obviously COVID, and then not, you know, having been able to fight. And before COVID, I really, really struggled to find fights, like really, really struggled. I went 2 years where I just couldn't get a fight before COVID. And I was in basically in camp for 2 years because someone would say yes to a fight and I'd do the entire camp, and we'd get anywhere from 5 to 9 or 10 days out from the fight, and they'd pull out. And then the next.
And is that because they then found out who you were? And it, no.
I don't know. Maybe, but it's not like I had a great record because I was fighting, like I was literally just taking any fight I could get. So I was fighting at I was fighting at way too heavyweight divisions for starters. You know, like I've fought now from 70, just over 70 kilos all the way down to 56 kilos. Like that's a crazy weight range when you think about the percentage of my body weight that is. Like,
what's your natural, like, what is it, 56? Is that what you should be fighting at?
56 is definitely where I'm going to continue fighting at. Now that I'm entering the pro ranks, I don't feel like when you're an AMI, you just want experience and time in there, and you want to get fights. And, you know, that's why I did that. But going into the professional ranks, you really need to, you know, think about those kind of things. You know, you want to set yourself up for success. And, you know, it's really hard. Like for the last 7, so I've had 7 fights since February last year. Wow. And every single one of them, I haven't had a single time where I've fought at the same weight back to back. So I've gone up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's a lot more extra stress and hard work and planning with like my coach, my dietitian, my strength and conditioning coach, and like putting on size and then stripping size off and changing your body composition. And it, in fairly short time frames, is very hard. And knowing that you're going to have to fight someone that's bigger than you and figure out how to like do that. And every fighter has different like body type, has different strengths and weaknesses. Like it's all, so I'm actually really excited because this fight that I'm about to have on the weekend is going to be at flyweight as well. So it's literally going to be the first time
Back to back.
that I can make
defending the
just
belt
make
there.
the same weight.
Yeah.
This is for a title defense.
No, I'm going professional, and I'm fighting actually for a professional title, which is not something generally that you do on a professional debut. But it's because both myself and my opponent have a number of accolades. So we both have world titles. So mine in Gamma and hers in IMAF. And then obviously I have the 2 other weight division titles as well. But we've both had a lot of fights in the last sort of year and a half, 2 years. And so we're actually ranked, both of us are ranked very highly in the pound for pound rankings in Australia and New Zealand. And in our weight division, we're actually ranked, higher than a lot of the pros. So yeah, I think the promotion asked for it, and the officiating body said, yeah, well, I mean, these 2 girls fighting, it makes sense that they should be fighting for a title regardless of it being their pro debut, because they've both got so many accolades and they're both ranked higher than a lot of the other pros. So
Is that 56
yeah, which is crazy.
kilos? The flyweights, is that 56?
Yeah, 56.7. Yep.
And this featherweight, was that 70?
No, featherweight was 65.8. So basically 66. So 10 kilos.
Wow, 10 kilos.
Just shy of 10 kilos between.
That's massive.
That's massive when I'm not a big person, like massive.
Yeah.
Like when you think about it at heavyweight, 10 kilos, maybe not as big of a deal. 10 kilos when you're making 56 kilos, 10 kilos is like 20% of your body weight.
Yeah, exactly. Enormous. Absolutely enormous. Then you said you fought at 70 kilos as well. Was that a catch weight fight?
It was 70 point something. Basically lightweight.
Lightweight, right.
Yeah, and that came about because it was going to be a featherweight fight. And then the promotion changed it when one came in with the them changing their weight divisions. It's a promotion that's not around anymore. They last minute decided to change it to you could just not cut, and you can weigh in all the way up to the next weight division's limit.
Makes no sense at all.
But the other fighter in camp knew about that the whole time, and I did not until a week before the fight. So I was like 66 kilos, and she cut to make 70.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can see why they're not
wasn't her,
around anymore.
it wasn't her fault. Like, she was just doing what her coach was telling her to do. At the end of the day, that's a promoter thing and potentially the coach thing. But it is what it is. You learn these things.
How did you go with the weigh-ins on every day with the competition that you did overseas for that world title?
Yeah. Well, I was really stressed about it, not gonna lie, but it ended up being like a breeze. Obviously over there, Gamma is kind of associated with one. So they also did hydration testing and like random hydration testing and stuff over there. Like, we did have to also go to a seminar about, USADA and drug testing and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have too many issues, but I had planned it all out with my dietitian. So that was, something that we were mindful of going over there, having my weight at a certain weight and sort of figuring out what I should be eating while I'm over there to not only fuel myself to be able to fight, but also to be able to recover. But I was pretty lucky. I didn't really take much damage. My first fight was a first round submission.
Nice.
And I won the gold medal via TKO in the third. So
Amazing. The third as well.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. And of course, you made history more recently here in Adelaide at the DFC by becoming the very first women's champion of the DFC. So a great moment and a fantastic victory speech. Maybe my favourite of all time for two reasons. One, you're especially eloquent and articulate, and in that moment where you've just fought 5 rounds, like really gone to war. I don't even understand how you're even breathing at that stage, let alone have been cognizant enough to deliver a speech in the way that you did. And as you're delivering that speech, I was holding the microphone, and all I was getting was like sprays of blood just all over my hand, all over the microphone, all over my nice collar, on my jacket, and it just kept coming just as you were doing that. And afterwards, I did a little sponge painting with the microphone. I did a little end of it, and now I wish I'd kept that and got you to sign it so we could put it here in the studio, but alas, that didn't
That's
happen.
all right. We can sign something else. I'll tell you a funny story along the similar lines. Also, thank you for the compliment on the post-fight speech. In my very first MMA fight, I traveled to Lithgow. I fought their hometown Lithgow girl. She was, I think, 2-0 or 3-0, and she'd stopped everyone in the first round, and it was my debut, and I went out there and I beat her and I TKO'd her, and there was a point in time where I was like kneeing her to the face, and she got a blood nose, and the blood was spraying everywhere. Didn't think much of it, but it wasn't until after the show, one of the officials came up to me, and I didn't realize he was one of the officials, and he's like, "Oi, you owe me a pie." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You owe me a pie." I don't even know who you are. Sorry, what are we talking about? And he's like, "Yeah, I was an official for your fight, and they just brought food to they just brought food to us, and then you literally kneed that girl in the face in front of us and sprayed our food with blood."
Extra tomato sauce for you.
Well, a kind of similar situation. I was just cage side and just watching the fight, almost minding my own business, and then just this spray of blood just came all over my beautiful orange copper. I'm not sure what the color of that jacket is.
Burnt orange.
Burnt orange. We'll go with burnt orange.
Caramel.
It's a velour of some kind, and just sprayed all the way.
My
all across me.
apologies.
And I looked
I was
up.
sharing.
There's the two of you. Yeah, it was traumatic for me.
Sharing is caring, right?
You need a red jacket. Get a red one.
Yeah. And then like I got all the blood off straight away because I knew what my tattoo would say. So I got the water and I got it all off, and I thought that's okay. I think it was like only round 2 or something like that. It's like plenty of time, that'll dry out. And then of course it did dry out. It'll all look great. And then I was interviewing at the end.
We need to get you a poncho.
Yeah. So
I'm so sorry.
It was a very
passionate.
So,
It was a very
Remy Largo, we
passionate
need a new
post-fight
jacket.
speech, that's for sure. But I genuinely mean, as you could tell, I've meant every word of it, and I think it's really important to try and showcase, as I said, the positive parts about the sport, and that's what I love to do. So the first thing that I wanted to do was thank Talia, because we couldn't have put on that show without both of us there. Like, that doesn't happen. I don't get to do that without an opponent. I didn't get to have that moment without her. And it wouldn't have meant as much if it wasn't that fight with her. Like, it was such a good fight, and we had so much. Like, I had the best time, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah. You were having a ball, win, lose, or draw. Drop Bear was having fun. Literally throughout the whole fight, you were smiling. You're enjoying. You were in the moment. There was no look of distress on your face. Plenty of blood, but no look of distress. You were genuinely having a great time in there.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I smile through majority of my fights, or all of them. I think I smiled at some point during them, but I generally smile a fair bit when I fight. Yeah, and then
searching for your opponent, isn't it?
yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't do it purposely to put them off or anything. I don't even think about that. But like, for example, my second fight, I did have a chat with my opponent about it. Like, after the fight, we were chatting. At the very beginning of the fight, she threw like the most perfect overhand right you've ever seen, and it clocked me right on the temple. And I just smiled at her and then started pushing forward, and the look on her face went from like, hell yeah, to like, oh shit. And we talked about it out the back afterwards. And she's like, I literally hit you with the most perfect overhand right that I've ever thrown. And then you just smiled at me. I was like,
Like you're fighting the Terminator or something.
and she's like, why did you do that? I was just like, oh, in my mind, I was like, yeah, good shot. Now it's my turn. Like, I'm in a fight. That's right.
You turned from fighter to fan back to fighter.
Yeah.
That's great.
And obviously you are a big fight fan as well. Like you love the craft, you love the art, and it seems to in my observations as well. Like you seem to understand the craft beyond the cage, beyond the ring. You seem to have a sense of to be an elite athlete in 2023 and beyond. I'm going to have to be a great communicator. I need to have an X factor. I need to put on a good show. You seem to have all of that in mind as you're going about your business.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and that really means a lot to me. It comes from obviously having been a giant fan before I even started this journey. Like I started this journey really, really late, and I actually. If you had told me if you had told me growing up that I'd be an athlete, I would have laughed at you because I grew up trash at sports, trash at anything athletic. And so like hearing someone call me an athlete is like I still get a bit of a like giggle out of it, like, oh, I'm an athlete now.
So you didn't play any sports when you were younger?
Oh, I played them. I was just terrible. I get picked last, or just I was really bad.
And whatever really gave you the thought that you would be good at fighting then?
Nothing. I thought I was going to be terrible at it like everything else, and I was terrible at it for a very, very, very long time.
But you were a fan of MMA that got you into the sport.
Yeah, that's what got me in, and I more just wanted to do it because like I was like, I would love to do this, but I didn't think that I would be able to or ever get to a point of doing it. But then as soon as I started the training, I was like, no, I do really badly want to try it, and I'll just see how far I can go. But the thing is, I'm not naturally athletic, but I work really, really hard. So like I played all those sports, even though I was trash at them, but I was the first one at training. I was the last one to leave. I would because I'm not naturally gifted. It takes me longer to get something. I find it really hard to learn athletic things, but then so I will obsess over them and do them where someone might take them an hour to learn something. It'll probably take me a month, 2 months to learn it, but I will like do it constantly. I'll do everything that my coach tells me to do, and I will try and do everything perfectly. Obviously can't be perfect, but it's through that I've gotten to where I am, and it's that determination, I guess, and being okay with not being good at something, but knowing that you can outwork that over time. So hard work, literally all I am is the product of hard work. I have no natural talent, athletic ability. It's all slowly been something I've chipped away at. So
hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, and that's it. Like I've watched that. It's taken a very, very, very long time, but I've watched that happen where all the talented people when I first started that I was like, or even where I was partway through my journey, and that talented people would come in and they could pick up things that took me years to learn, in the space of a week. And I'd be like, oh, that's so frustrating. But then, they don't stay on. They're not consistent. They don't turn up when they're sick, or, when it's their friend's birthday, or, and so I think that's where my success comes from, is not having been good at anything. It was just hard work. And then, so I didn't think I'd ever do it. And then, So anyway, circling back, it comes from a love of the sport as a fan, number one. And then number two, because of that fan element, and then wanting to make the sport better. And I wanted to be that role model that I wish I had in every element. But I actually am so passionate about combat sports. I also commentate. So I've commentated every kind of combat sport. So probably in the last few months, I've probably done 5 or 6 different shows that I've commentated.
Amazing.
I'm also trained to officiate. So I can, if I'm going to a fight show and I'm not commentating, I'm probably there officiating. So I understand, I understand combat sports and fighting from all those different perspectives, and having been a fighter makes me a better commentator because I know how they're feeling or what I would like to hear a commentator say. And then I understand how to call the action because I'm a fighter, or I understand probably what the judges are thinking because I understand the scoring criteria. And, and then as a fighter, well, I understand the scoring criteria. So I know if I can't finish someone, what I need to do to win rounds, So it all comes back to that. And then just in general, as I've said, I just want to showcase the sport in a positive way. So, and I think that's the best way to do it.
I was going to say, have you had any media training or anything? The way you speak is very, very professional, and you can hear it in your voice that it's like, well, this girl sounds like she's a pro at this.
She's not just a pro fighter; she's a pro presenter as well.
Because most of the time when we have guests on, it might be their first ever time doing any sort of media or doing an interview or podcast, and it was like,
like it is for us.
Yeah. And it's our 300th debut this episode. But straight away you've got a professional setup right there. You've got a fantastic microphone. It all looks great. You've got your headphones. The gear is all set up, and then as soon as you start speaking, it's like, oh, she knows what she's doing here. This is a professional voice coming out.
Well, you know how I said I want to tell people about other elements of my life because I'm a bit of a jack of all trades. When I was growing up and I was in school, so I guess what some of the things are that are the furthest from being an athlete possible would probably be science, which I did all of the sciences. I actually studied forensic science at university. But the other thing that's probably as far away from sport as possible is drama. And growing up, I actually did drama, and I actually was the lead in a play that I travel around, like a theatre production when I was in school. So I did some acting, like theatre acting, when I was younger. And I was told that that's what I should do in life, but I was like, there's no money in that.
But it seems like this is the coalescence of all of your skills and all of your passions kind of really coming together, not just in your fighting, but in terms of your commentary, and the podcast just seems like a beautiful extension of all of that, because you can really tie it all in and have your own voice and be able to ply your craft and talk about the thing that you love the most.
Yeah, and that's
your partner, of course. I'm talking about.
Their story sounds almost identical to mine in terms of acting work, and then doing the podcast and doing sports that you really
the same people.
It's weird.
There you go.
Saying there, I'm like, that's me. I've done that. That's, not apart from the triple championship. That's like,
hey, you've got the double biceps. So
the achievement part.
Yeah, apart from the like winning bit.
Yeah. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, but you're winning at life, right?
Right. Yeah. Well,
you did mention you came to the sport a little bit later than most, and so how old were you when you did discover MMA, or that you started training in MMA?
I was 25, about to turn 26.
Wow, right.
So I've only been in the sport like a handful of years, and given that 2 of them were COVID and 2 of them I couldn't find fights.
yeah. And then
extraordinary.
So
you made up for it in the last 12 or 18 months, though, haven't you?
Yeah, well, that's right.
Will come in that short time period.
Yeah. Well, that's been the best thing. Obviously, COVID wasn't the best thing, but coming out the other side, because everyone just wanted to handpick fights, and they have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and like, yes, I'll fight you, and then 2 weeks out, either pulling out or being like, can we have a gentleman's agreement to only do striking? And you're like, no. Or get on a plane and go somewhere. Like, people just weren't showing up. they weren't fighting. They were just only wanted, you know, to handpick fights or, you know, I don't know. People just weren't showing up. And then ever since COVID happened, where there's been this long period where nobody could fight and no fight shows could put any shows on, ever since then, everybody's keen to fight. Maybe not everybody, but a bigger majority of the people or the girls out there are keen to fight. And they're, you know, so many fight shows, so many have just either, you know, put on heaps of shows if they were already an established show, or we've seen so many new ones across Australia pop up. So like there's more opportunity, and I've just literally said yes to every single fight.
Yeah, it's worked out for you, obviously. The professional fight that you've got this weekend, and that's for a different title or a new title at the professional level.
Yes.
Does that add on to your, like, if you've got 3 at the moment, is it because they're 3 different weight classes? This is one of the weight classes you already have a title in. So if you win on the weekend, it doesn't mean a 4-division champion would still be a 3-division, but you'd have a professional belt and the amateur belt as well.
Yeah, so I would have 4 different titles because they are different titles, but it would still only span across 3 different weight divisions.
Right.
You know, but one of them be, but it would be for a professional title, which means I'm going to fight 5 5-minute rounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had you made up your mind before your last title fight at DFC to vacate that belt after winning it, or did you make up your mind after the fight? Or had you already decided that you were going to be turning pro before the fight, or was that something in the moment where you went, you know what, I think I've achieved everything at amateur, I'm gonna go through now?
No, I had already thought initially when this one came up that was going to be my last amateur fight regardless, but even so we signed the contract for that, but then I also got then the opportunity for the fight that's happening on the weekend, professional debut, only 4 weeks later. So it's a big change going between AMI and pro already. That's a big change. 5-minute rounds, and you've got all of the weapons now. And to fight twice in 4 weeks is a big task, especially when they're, you know, you've just fought a title fight and the potential to get injured and whatever. But then throw on top that this is going to be straight up a professional title, which means 5 5-minute rounds, not 3 5-minute rounds.
Yeah.
You know, and
Right to
then
the deep end.
yeah. Because I mean, when you add in the 1-minute breaks, that's half an hour of fighting potentially. And not many people would be willing to do that. But I'm not the average person. I don't think so. I'm willing to take the risks because I want to achieve things that other people haven't before. Hence the triple weight division thing. I just wanted to, like, I set myself that goal last year, and I worked my ass off to achieve it, and it happened. And so I got that opportunity. I couldn't say no to it. Obviously, we made them aware that we already had signed the contract for Diamondback. And so be it everybody knew, everybody was still happy to take the fight and the matchup and make it happen. So it was full steam ahead. I was solely focused on that fight. And then once that was over, I was ready for the next one. But I already knew that going into that, winning that belt, that I was then going to be making my pro debut, which means that I would essentially, when I actually step into the cage to become a pro, then that automatically vacates that belt anyway. But I really felt in that moment though, you know, with the fight that we put on, that, you know, no matter what, the next time that belt goes on the line, that Talia should be fighting for it. And I think she very much earned that. Like, I don't think that it may be a loss on her record, but I don't think she really loses anything by being, part of that fight. Yeah.
And what's been your toughest fight so far?
Oh, that's a great question.
He's good at great questions.
I've been doing my media training.
He went on an acting course when he was at high school.
There's probably been a couple for different reasons, and sometimes they're not specifically what happened in the fight, but more around getting there. I think my second ever MMA fight was really, really hard, really hard. And I learned a lot about myself in that fight, and I didn't have very good circumstances going into it. That was, we've all got one horror story about cutting weight. There was that. I was injured. There's a whole bunch of issues going into it, and then I put on a 3-round war and learnt so much about myself. So it's one of my favorite fights, but it was incredibly tough. Very, very, very hard. So I'd say that's probably one of them.
What's been the most fun you've had in the cage?
Oh, every moment.
getting hit with an overhand right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Picking the wrong moment to shoot in for a takedown. That's every fighter's, I guess, biggest fear. And then just being like, because I had this moment where I'd just thrown this beautiful spinning back fist, and I seen Talia's head go back, and I seen the reaction on her face. I knew I had her, I knew she was hurt from it. And then I just waited for way too long. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna let's go for a shot or shoot in just as she goes to throw that kick and headbutt a shin. And you just see like the split second before it lands, I see her hip twitch, and I was like, oh shit. this gonna hurt.
I've made a big mistake.
Yeah. And that was the moment she realized.
Yeah, that's good.
And now we've been talking now for nearly 45 minutes, and I feel like we're friends now, and we can have this conversation.
You're gonna ask for money.
How did you get the nickname Drop Bear?
It's a good question. Are you full of them? I will tell you, don't worry. It was given to me, and it pretty much suits me and my fight style. But basically, being the good Australian that I am, so obviously all the big MMA news used to drop on Twitter. That was the first place it would always drop, because for some reason Americans like Twitter.
Yeah.
So I had a group of friends that I had just made on Twitter that were from all different countries, and we would talk every UFC card about MMA and about the UFC and, whatever else. And I had shared with them or one of them had seen a local newspaper story about a guy in Australia, and he was in the river and he was playing with a pet snake. So he's got a VB long neck in one hand, and he's got a snake, and he throws the snake, and then it swims back at him, and he picks it up and he throws it again. And they were like, this is horrifying. What is wrong with you, Australians?
If he was wearing thongs and stubbies, it would have been.
Yeah. And they were horrified, and they were like, everything in Australia tries to kill you, talking about sharks and spiders and snakes. And I was like, yeah, and the worst thing you've got to look out for are drop bears, being the good Australian that I am.
Yeah.
And they were like, what's that? And then obviously I sent them some information on what drop bears were. And I had them going for a very long time. And they were like, I'm never coming to Australia. I always knew that things were going to try and kill me, and I thought that was all right because I'd be able to see them. But now I have to not only look at where I step for spiders and snakes, but I've got to look up as well. And eventually I let them know, the information about drop bears. And they, from that moment, were just like, what the hell? One, what is wrong with you guys, and how dare you do this? But second of all, why don't you have like a sporting team named after that, like the Darwin Drop Bears or something? Like, that's amazing, or whatever. And then they were like, hang on a second. That's your fight name. That's, that's you. You have to be. Your name's Danielle. You're Danielle Drop Bear Curtis. Like, as if you could be anything else. And like, it just fit me so well, because I'm so like passionately Aussie, and then it just suits my fight style and stuff as well. And then other people have sort of taken that and run with it. Like, people are like, oh yeah, you're Drop Bear because you're cute but deadly. or like, oh, because you like to drop down and maul people, and like, or Drop Bear, it's a Aussie legend, and that's what I'm trying to become, or whatever. It's kind of just grown
That
over
really
time
works.
as
That was
well.
great.
But it's
Yeah,
just
it
who I
really
am. It's just who
Good
I
name
am
to come
now.
on the podcast, I'd say.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's probably a good name for a podcast, even, or a combination of that. Something like
Yes.
what was your name of your podcast again?
It's Drop Bear Downpour, and the reason why it's called that is that's what I actually call my supporters, and like as a collective term for drop bears. Yeah,
Wow.
because back when I started and I had a look. Obviously, I had a look on the internet and Wikipedia and wherever else, and there was no sort of set collective term for a group of drop bears.
Wow.
So
Must have murder
I
of crows
actually
thing.
decided that that's what it was going to be, because it rolls off the tongue nicely. Actually I was fighting on a promotion called Storm Damage, and so it just made sense that when I was talking about my supporter group, is like there's going to be a downpour of drop bears at Storm Damage or whatever. And then it just kind of stuck as well. So like on the back of my supporter shirts, it actually says welcome to the Drop Bear Downpour, or welcome to the downpour, or whatever. So that's what I call all my friends, family, supporters. It's you're part of the Drop Bear Downpour, or the downpour of drop bears. So then it just made sense to call the podcast that. Because
so obviously the whole family's on board now, and all the friends they're on the Drop Bear wagon. But was there a time when they weren't, and you had to kind of win them over to the idea that you were going to be Australia's greatest female MMA champion?
Mom, I want to go fight people in a cage.
Well, it's funny. My mum is so into it now. She's so funny. She loves it. Like every time every time the UFC comes to Australia, she sends me messages going, are you buying tickets? When are they? How much are they? She comes along.
That's how my wife,
She comes along. I don't know if you've seen her when she got in the cage, obviously at Diamondback, and she was loving life.
Yes.
That was probably where Dave was wiping all the blood off of his jacket.
Yeah. Well, when I was overseas, because she had been to all of my fights up until I fought overseas at the Gamma World Championships, and she was house sitting my house, and she got triple O called on her because the neighbors thought that she was being killed when I won the gold medal.
Wow, that's incredible.
So mum is very firmly your number one supporter by the sounds of things.
Yeah. So she loves it. And it's so funny because I have a younger sister, and so a lot of people obviously ask her all the time, what do you think about Danielle doing this? It's so dangerous, etc., etc. The common misconceptions of the sport. And she goes, yeah, my little sister plays like league tag and Oz tag and like touch footy and stuff. And my mum's like, well, Danielle, fights people in a cage, but they're also trained. You have to, train for a very long time before you hop in there. There's a doctor sitting right beside you. They have to get bloods and medicals to be able to fight. They have to get checked by the doctor before they fight on the night. They have to get checked by the doctor after the fight. And there's a medical professional right there and a referee to stop it as soon as there's any kind of issues anyway. She's like, my sister, she will play a game of footy and she's been knocked out before or broken arms. She's been knocked out a couple of times and it's taken 45 minutes to get an ambulance to her. She's like, what's the difference? My other daughter could literally go, I want to play soccer or I want to play like league tag. And they go, yep, turn up to training on Wednesday and you'll be on the field for your first game on Saturday. You don't need to have any training to do any of these other sports. And so my mum kind of frames it like that. She's like, Danielle's had barely any injuries, and where she has, there's been a medical professional there, right there. And the role of the referee. And I think that's a bit of, the misconception from other people. And so even at the lowest amateur level, you still have to do all of those things. And if you get knocked out, or badly hurt, there's medical suspensions, even at the lowest level. Whereas the footy, your
Yeah.
local footy, they can go back on after getting knocked out, you know,
Yeah.
that same
Yeah.
game or the next
10
week.
minutes
or,
later. Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
definitely
So
plenty of safeguards there at MMA fights that I don't think the general public are really familiar with how many layers of support there are for the athletes, even at an amateur event. So
yeah,
of all the sports, if if you are going to be physical, that's the one. That's where you're going to get all of the attention immediately to ensure that you're kept in good stead and that you're not forced to come back to the sport sooner than what's healthy as well. I think that's one of the great things that they have done in MMA, and of course maybe because there was so much so much in the regulatory environment that they had to comply with just in order to get the sport approved and sanctioned so that they could compete in the first place. It's almost as a result of that, it's one of the safest sports that you could get involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's developmental pathways. Like you're not starting your first fight copping elbows and stuff either. And I don't think people realize that. Like people who aren't informed or educated on the sport only see the things that end up going viral, which is, a leg break or a crazy knockout or something. But they don't realize that one, that's only a smaller percentage of how fights often go. Number one. Number two, they don't see that the fact that the doctor is literally outside the cage. They only see that bit of footage. They don't see the doctor. They don't see, then the medical suspensions or, all of those other bits and pieces. So yeah, it's cool because my mum is kind of like also now a really big fan. She loves the sport, and she watches it. Like she'll watch
The favorite fighter.
Yeah, I hope so. No,
What would be your mum's favorite fighter? Apart from you, apart from the
Unless
dog
Cadell Evans takes up fighting.
it's all downhill fighting.
But it's kind of cool because she's so now she's also becoming quite passionate about it, or at least being informed that she is kind of a really good advocate as well. So when people do ask her those questions, she actually comes back and explains and will give people information. So I'm really happy and sort of really proud of her for that, because she is doing that same sort of thing in a different way to what I think is really important. And it's like educating people and showing them like the other side and why people like us love the sport, because and just get them over that hump of the bit that's stopping them.
Absolutely. I was going to say there's never in UFC never been any deaths, serious paralyzing injuries. Never had anything like that. We've had leg breaks and arm breaks and people getting knocked out and all that sort of thing.
We've had that on the podcast. So
that's regular. But you compare that to something like boxing or even kickboxing, where unfortunately there are deaths every year. It is as you mentioned, there is so many safety aspects to it.
One of the things I'm always curious with female fighters, and so here's my sexist question. We had Shane Mitchell on the podcast last week, and he was just mentioning in his knockout on the PFL how he split open his ear, and we were having a good look at his ear. He's a good-looking young man, Shane Mitchell, but that ear, the ear's not helping. So he's got the cauliflower ear and a little bit, and the recent stitches haven't done it any benefit. But from a woman's perspective, from a female fighter's perspective, do you think about those things like, what if I get the cauliflower ear, or do you have cauliflower ear?
I've got a cauliflower ear.
And how do you feel about that? Because in all respects, I'll say almost all of the female fighters that we've had on DFC cards and the other cards that I've announced on, they've all been very feminine girls. These aren't tomboys that are out there that are wishing that they were boys. These are girly girls that just happen to fucking fight, so how do you deal with some of those injuries that might I guess give you some ugly ears and a bit of a bent nose and that type of thing? How do you deal with that?
I literally do not care. Hey. I'm happily, proudly, a girl, but I don't girl very well. So like I it's very rare that you'll ever see me in makeup. It's like I've never had a fake tan. I've had fake nails once. I've never had fake eyelashes. I have completely real hair.
Wow.
I'm lazy. Actually, lazy's probably not the right word.
Well, you don't have to
All
take
of my
makeup on and
time,
off every
effort.
time you
I'm the laziest world champion you've ever seen.
Yeah, well, that's what I
Work
was gonna say.
really
Lazy's
hard,
not
but I'm really
right.
lazy.
It's like all of my time, effort, focus goes into everything else that I'm doing. I just don't really care. Like I had a friend say to me that she was getting her eyebrows done, and she had these list of things that she needed to get done, and she was like, "Oh, the only one I'm thinking about skipping is training." And then, other things were like get a tan and get her eyebrows done. And I was like, "What?"
Even tan laundry.
And I was like, she's like, "Well, don't you get your eyebrows done all the time?" I was like, "Man, if I remember to go and get them just like waxed or something, once every 6 months, I'm doing all right."
But other priorities.
With the change from 3 minutes to 5 minutes, is your style, are you more of a grappler that you'd say you prefer to be on the ground going for submissions? Do you think that having that extended time in the round would help you?
To be honest, I don't think I'm a grappler. I think I'm just literally. I don't think I'm especially good at any one thing. I think what makes me good is that I'm well-rounded enough that I feel comfortable taking the fight wherever it goes, like fighting it wherever it goes or taking it wherever I feel it needs to go based on the opponent in front of me. So there's some fights where I am grappling heavy just because that seems to be the easiest thing. Like when I get in there with the opponent and then I'm like, oh, all right, it doesn't really seem like, you're going to be able to stop me or whatever, then I go that. But I've had heaps of fights where they've literally just been striking as well. And I've, out striking people. And so I think people get focused on the highlight reels of where I take people down and ground and pound them and maybe don't see the rest of the fight or my other fights. And then they think I'm just a grappler. But
Might be the drop bear nickname.
I think it's that too. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's my biggest strength is that I don't have any standout natural talents. It's just hard work. And I feel like all I've done is sort of work on everything. So I just feel comfortable wherever and can adapt. I think my fight IQ from all of these aspects too, being a fan, being a commentator, being a fighter, being an official, I feel like my fight IQ is probably one of the things that makes me successful, and just being able to adapt and change what I'm doing in there and not get stuck on this is what I think I should be doing. It's just like, living in the moment, like what you guys talked about, being really present and just going, yep, well, they're trying to do this. I'm going to do this.
So
but-
you sorry.
No,
Go on.
I'm just going to circle back. Obviously, I think the 5-minute rounds plays well to my strengths as well because I like to warm into a fight generally, and I like to push the pace, and I like to I feel like I am a very, very fit, and I genuinely have so much fun in there too that I think that plays to my strengths. The longer that things go, I just wear people down in any respect, whether it's on the ground or whether it's standing. When I put people against the cage, I'm going to wear people down. So I think having that extra time because also because I'm having so much fun, it just flies by. And then my corner's yelling out, "You got 30 seconds left." And I'm like, "What? I'm just this round's just getting started." That's how I feel every time. Every time I'm like, "You're joking." So I'm really excited to fight 5-minute rounds, to be honest.
Oh, have you gotten gassed at all in a fight?
Yeah, I have. Not in any of my recent ones. More so like earlier on when I was fighting, bigger people, and when I've had things going wrong prior to fights. I guess the closest to gassing out in my recent fights would have been my fight on Eternal last year, and I went into that fight with a torn shoulder, and I only had 3 weeks to get ready because I had torn it, and then I was like, I wasn't allowed to use it at all for like 6 to 8 weeks. And so
Let's have a fight.
yeah, and I fought a striker. And yeah, so my gas tank was probably the worst that it's been in recent years heading into that fight, because I really only had, because 1 week of that 3 weeks is fight week. You know, you're cutting weight and you're not doing full training in fight week. So I pretty much only had 2 weeks to try and get ready for a fight.
Yes.
But again, amateur, I just say yes to fights. I take the opportunities and I learn from them and all of that kind of stuff. So that was probably, I would say, gas tank wise, probably my worst performance in recent years, but definitely prior to COVID, fighting the big girls and having had injuries and stuff heading into my second MMA fight. I was wrecked. It was a horror weight cut. I cut like 7 kilos in 2 and a bit days, which is,
Jeez.
yeah. And it was,
So it's like
I
more
didn't
than
have
10%
saliva anymore. It was horrendous.
Insane.
How'd you do it? Was it sauna or was it bath or
It was all of the above.
all at once?
And now you've got your first your pro debut, which is also for a championship belt. Where is that fight?
So that will be on Enduro Fight Series in Canberra this
Enduro
weekend.
Fight Series. And
Yeah.
how can people catch that?
So it'll be live streamed on Combatant's website. So yeah, the show is sold out. So there's no tickets to go to it, but people can definitely watch it via the Combatant's website. It's Enduro Fight Series number 4, and us girls are the co-main event. So very similar to on Diamondback, how that we were fighting for the flyweight amateur title co-main event.
Yeah.
This time it'll be fighting for the professional flyweight title co-main event. So very excited.
Amazing. And wonderful to see women's MMA now elevated to that main event position, not just on the big stage of the UFC, but also at a regional level now. So obviously the crowd loves it as much as anybody else. So absolutely amazing. So tell us again, the podcast, where can people find the podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is Drop Bear Downpour, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, but the actual podcast episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And given that it's a video podcast, if you do listen just audio, I actually put up all the additional video content extras up on our Instagram in the Instagram stories, so you can just check that out. Only a couple of minutes versus trying to rewatch the whole thing. And if you want to follow me, Drop Bear MMA on all social media.
Drop Bear MMA, got that one sewn up. Hey, that's pretty good.
One last question before we sort of wrap everything up. With you said your partner was discussing his perspective when watching your fights or leading into a fight. What was it like for him watching you in the cage, or did he have any moments where he was just like, "Oh, I can't"? He
was in my corner, so he was with me out the back, warming me up. So obviously I do pads with my coach, and he's like getting water ready and whatever needs to be ready. But then he was my person when I would do like partner work, getting ready out the back. And then obviously he was sitting in the corner. So his role was yelling the time or re-yelling whatever my coach is saying if he thinks I haven't heard it. So yeah, and we chatted extensively about that. It was really, really cool because I asked him when does he get the most nervous, and it was probably a little bit. I wasn't probably not what I thought. He gets the most nervous when we're about to walk out, when I take those first couple of steps before he does. So that's apparently when he gets the most nervous. And then when he gives me the kiss goodbye before I hop into the cage. But then when he sees me fight, because I have the big smile on my face and everything, and he sees that I'm doing what I love, it kind of puts him at ease. And then he gets focused. I think he actually likes it better being in my corner compared to being in the crowd, because in the crowd, then he's just focused on worrying. But when he's given a task like being in the corner, I think that think that makes it a lot easier for him. And then when he got into the cage, I actually put a clip of him, once the fight was over and we were thanking each other's corners and stuff. And there's Diamondback managed to capture it. He's, thanked the other, the other corners team. And then as he's walking back across to stand there to get ready for the result, he's like, but yeah, no, he for him it's like absolute pure joy because he sees all the hard work behind the scenes that goes into it. And so it's really special for me to actually share those moments with him, for him to be in my corner and then be in the cage with me when I won. And when I got down off the cage and I gave him a big kiss, I actually put blood all over his face. I don't know.
There was a lot of blood. There was a lot of blood. So
did he feel that he had to sort of hide his nerves for your benefit?
I assume that he kind of does, but I think that's just him. I think that he, for the most part, doesn't feel too nervous, and then when he does, he kind of just hangs behind me. And then I think he hides it in those moments. But because he doesn't want to take away from me or my performance or have me worrying about him. But I think he also knows me really, really well, that I'm just going to go out there and have heaps of fun. So.
And I have checked out your Instagram, and I really did like the way that you guys piece together those stories with the backups and the visuals. So as much as it's a podcast, it's not just you guys talking to screen the whole time. With those little highlight reels that people can find there on your Instagram page, you're lending a little bit of background and you're providing that B-roll footage and really making the person, me in that case, feel like I'm a fly on the wall and that I'm actually there with you guys. So the podcast, you guys are doing a fantastic job.
Aww.
2 episodes in, and
thank you.
Yeah, well, you've got a fan in me. I'm subscribed. So and anybody who's been watching the podcast this long so far is now surely a fan of Danielle Drop Bear Curtis as well. So definitely get onto the Drop Bear Downpour podcast. You can find that on Apple, YouTube, of course, and head over to Instagram, pick up some of those little highlights. I'm sure you're going to love what you see. Subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're following this young lady's journey as she takes on the world of MMA, doing Australia proud, a fantastic ambassador, not just for your sport, but for our country. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Danielle Drop Bear Curtis.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really
you.
appreciate
Amazing.
it.